Welcome to Priceless Takes.
And we are live from the Gold Coast, Australia. Welcome back, everyone, to Priceless Takes, episode 64, our second NBA episode of the season. I am your host, Luka Price, and joining me today is Reuben Lind and Gabe Marguglio, two basketball savants in their own right. Gentlemen, how are we today?
I'm doing fantastic this afternoon. Great basketball, very entertaining, even some great surprises in there as well.
Doing well, doing well. How you been, Luka?
Listen, I'm doing fantastic. Listen, I was a bit disappointed after Jalen Brunson's missed game winner because that looked like it was in. Jalen Brunson is my boy, narrowly losing to the Bulls, but there's a lot going on. So for our viewers, this is our second NBA episode of the season. We're going to do this for about 20 to 25 minutes, and then afterwards, we're going to say goodbye to our lovely two panelists, and I'm going to take you on a deep dive into all things NFL because we are approaching the playoff point for the National Football League. But starting with the NBA, the thing I want to talk about first, guys, and this is something that I could not see happening considering I predicted this team to be my disappointment team of the year. The Cleveland Cavaliers have gotten out to a 13-0 record after defeating the undermanned Philadelphia 76ers today, 114 to 106. In Philadelphia. Now, as I said, my disappointment team this season was this team. They have impressed me so far. I'm a bit hesitant to just yet say if I think they will keep this up, but just in general, they have the best offensive rating in the NBA, the best three-point shooting percentage in the NBA, and the second best point differential in the NBA. With the monsters that they have a very all-around good team, but I still have question marks. Reuben, what are your thoughts on the Cavs' hot start to the season?
Well, I say for every sport that there's always a new bounce with the coach, and I think you're getting this at the moment. When you talk about them being first in offensive rating, they have the most amount of points off turnovers, which is 23.1 points per game. Second is Golden State with 21.3. And it's the Celtics. They shoot a lot of threes. That's their philosophy. That's how they won against the Dallas Mavericks, I believe. But the Cavaliers are not even shooting a lot. It's what you said, Luka. It's their number one in three-point percentage. And Donovan Mitchell, Caris LeVert, and Darius Garland are all having career years from three, and also from the field goal percentage. This comes back to the true shooting percentage as well, with it being 63% top of the league. Last season, the Celtics were top with 60.9%. Whether it's sustainable or not, I don't know, because as you said, Luka, there's still some vulnerability with that Cavs team, but they've had a very impressive start, and it can't be ignored.
Yeah, I agree with that, Reuben. I think they're starting to really blossom as a team. I believe with this start, they're going to absolutely kill it throughout this season and go really far into the playoffs. I can see it. They're like a young Celtics team at the moment. Still trying to gel, but after 3 years, they're looking quite well. I'm excited to see what they can do.
Yeah, they've impressed me so far, and I guess the other thing that's impressed me about them is they've done it against good teams. Like they're beaten. I mean, I still think the Bucks are a good team, whether we want to speak about their record or not. But they played the Bucks close twice. I think any team with Giannis is a good team. They've beaten the Lakers. They easily beat the Warriors. They've beaten the Knicks. Like they haven't just done this against the Pistons and the Wizards. Okay, like they have versed good quality opposition, and I like them now. Like, I think that I've seen a lot of comparisons to the 2014-15 Hawks. Like, I sort of see it, maybe not so as much of like the actual players, but in terms of like how they all like share the ball around. But I think Donovan Mitchell, for me, I think is their main guy. But do I think he's going to be their main guy later on in the season? I think, and I've been of this belief for quite a while, that I think Donovan Mitchell's a great player, but I don't think he can be the best player on a championship team. And I think that was always one of my biggest concerns with the Cavs. And we've seen the Cavaliers have some underwhelming playoff performances in the past. The Magic took them to 7 games, and I do like me some Magic, but the Cavs were the better team in that series. They got easily handled by the Celtics, and then the year before, the Knicks beat them in 5 when they had the home court advantage. So for me, I think it's a great story. I think it's like could they break the Warriors' record to start the season? But I don't think they will. I think it's going to, they're not going to maintain this level. But Could they be the number 1 seed? The way the rest of the Eastern Conference is looking right now, who knows? Like, maybe. I'm not ruling that out. I would love to be the 8th seed if that was the case. But for me personally, I think they do have a lot of things. They have size, they have shot blocking, they have defense, they have guard play, they have some good bench depth with Karis LeVert, and they seem to have a good coach. Obviously, Kenny Atkinson, he was fired from his first job in Brooklyn, but that could go down to some KD, Kyrie politics. Gabe, you might know a bit more about that than me, but he's come under Steve Kerr now. He's had a bit of a renaissance, it seems. Where do you see this team's ceiling, Gabe?
I think if they can keep this up and just keep this energy up and just come in every day and know what they have to do to get it done, I think they can be one seed, 2 seed, especially with how the East is looking.
And in terms of the playoffs, can you see them making the finals, conference finals, second round? What are we thinking?
Second round for sure. I'd have to see matchups for conference finals, and yeah, we'd have to see how it pans out. But I reckon they can make it to the second round for sure.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think there's still a lot of vulnerabilities. Darius Garland's very inconsistent, and part of what they started off really well is because how hot he's been. I don't know whether he can continue that in the playoffs. Jarrett Allen's offensive liability in the playoffs. This could be a very similar situation to the Utah Jazz when they had Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. They get the first season, had a solid season. Yeah, that's a funny thing about it, but they could get bounced out first, second round. Look, we'll talk about it later. The East is very competitive, and yes, they've got a very hot record, but some teams, they've had injury concerns, not started off the best. I just don't see how sustainably, with the depth and with the vulnerabilities, how it can happen for a full season. But I'm waiting to be proved wrong.
Well, let's get into the Eastern Conference because there has been a lot of chatter between the conferences this year. As of right now, the Cavs, along with the Celtics, are the only 2 teams in the entire conference that has a winning record, which could be for a number of reasons. Whereas when you look at the Western Conference, 10 teams have a winning record. We got the Sixers sitting at 2-9. Joel Embiid came back for his first game yesterday, had 13 points, 2 of 11 shooting. Tyrese Maxey's injured. Paul George came back, looked like a shell of himself, but he had 29 points yesterday before sitting out today. You have the Bucks. They barely beat the Pistons today, and it took Giannis 59 points to do so, which wasn't good for my fantasy team, considering I was versing him today. You also got Lillard, he's injured. Doc Rivers, a coach that nobody in the NBA trusts.
With Darvin Ham, the GOAT.
With Darvin Ham. And then you got the Celtics, and the thing that we love the Celtics, but we know what the history is with repeat champions. They haven't made it past the second round for 6 straight seasons. It seems like the Eastern Conference is begging for someone at this point, and maybe it is the Cavs. I don't think it is, but it seems like they just are wanting someone to come and take it through. Gabe, do you think that the Eastern Conference at this point and the lack of wins, do you think this is something or nothing for them?
I think it's something. I think a big change is coming to the NBA. I believe 2 more teams might get added, and I think if that happens, they will have to move. Maybe Minnesota, I think, is in the conversation for getting moved, and I can't remember.
Could be Reuben's Grizzlies too.
Yeah,
it could be.
Which would make, I think, the NBA and the East especially way more competitive than how it's looking now.
Look, it just shows how good the West is, to be fair. The Orlando Magic also have a winning record. They won today against the Pacers. I think the Magic is 7-6
too. 6-5. Or 7-6. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're 7-6. Yeah, because look, the Magic could be doing really well too, but Ben Caro is out. I think the problem with the East, Luka, you pointed out, it's the health. I think the health is the biggest team and thing, and you have the super teams now. Like you have the Knicks and 76ers. You're still finding chemistry with them. But I think it just comes down to the West being the better conference than the Eastern Conference, in my opinion.
Looking at the Western Conference, we do have the 3-headed race right now. Gabe, I want to get your thoughts because I'm not sure if they're both still your teams, but I know one of them definitely is. We have Oklahoma City, who I don't think anyone's surprised by, but even for them, now they have a 6'5" center in Jalen Williams because their 3 centers are out. You have the Warriors, who I did not think would start the season off this well. And then you have the Suns, who coming into the season I actually thought was sneaky good. with Budenholzer as a coach. He's a championship coach. But, Gabe, what are your thoughts, particularly more so in regards to Golden State and Phoenix? Do you think that they can maintain this form to start that they've started the season with?
I believe if Kevin Durant can stay healthy and Draymond Green can keep drinking that LeBron Hennessy, I think they'll both make it pretty far into the playoffs. I'm not gonna lie.
What do you think needs to change for Phoenix this year, considering what happened last year, how they got handled so easily by Minnesota? Is it just a coaching change, or do you think something else, like on the court with the players in the locker room? What do you think needs to be different for them so that doesn't happen again this year?
I think we need a better center than Nurkic. I don't want to put all the blame on Nurkic. I'm not saying it's just him, but I believe if with the team we have acquiring
DeAndre Ayton?
No, not DeAndre Ayton. Who's the point guard we just got?
Tyus Jones.
Oh, Tyus Jones. I could tell you all about Tyus Jones. Yeah.
A true point guard. You know what I mean? Just someone who can facilitate three scorers. I think if we had a big bad center, I think Phoenix would be top number one, first seed. The Warriors, on the other hand, I think there's still way too many holes for them to keep this run up. If I'm being honest, just within the roster, I don't think Steph can carry him this far.
Yeah, look, I agree with Gabe on Golden State. Like, they've been very impressive. Buddy Hield's been averaging close to 18 points. But I think the problem with Golden State is that usually you need that second or third person at least to come along with you, or somewhat of a team chemistry. But Curry's the only one averaging above 20. Buddy Hield's averaging 17.6. Jonathan Kuminga, I've been actually a bit disappointed about. I picked him as most improved. And look, he's only had 15 points, and I think he needs to be that second star that Clay was if Golden State are going to have any chance. And look, Gabe, I know you love Phoenix, and I love Tyus Jones. I could go on all day about how impressive he was at Memphis, and you could talk about a center all you like, but you have three big stars that have health concerns, and you don't necessarily have cap space to get that center. So that's the problem I have. Like, KD's already been out. Bradley Beal's already missed a couple of games, and Devin Booker, fingers crossed he doesn't get injured, but he's going to miss time. So that's my problem with them. It's the health. And I don't think they've necessarily improved the depth. Like, Budenholzer and Vogel both won a chip, both impressive coaches. I don't think that's going to make that much of a difference, but just looking at the West and the teams themselves, I just don't think there is enough there for them to win the championship and be a contender.
I think Budenholzer and Vogel, I view them very differently, just me personally. And I think also when you look at their styles of coaching, like Budenholzer is a much more offensive-minded coach. Vogel was sort of a defensive guy, and it seemed like Vogel could never really get through to the players. It kind of seemed like that was sort of the same thing with the Lakers. He could never really seem to get through to the players. Budenholzer, I think, was a bit of a different situation with him exiting Milwaukee. I think there was a lot of things going on. But yeah. I think for the Suns, I think Tyus Jones is a great fit for them. Just that is who they need. That's who they lacked last year. Booker can't be the point guard and the best scorer.
He replaces Chris Paul in a way.
Yeah, and he is that guy that he can just get assists, and if he's needed to, we've seen him a couple times this year. If he's needed to, he's put his head down. He can score, he can shoot the occasional three. But I do agree with Reuben. But I think when you decided to get Bradley Beal, you're not getting a top of the market center. But I don't know if that's really what Phoenix needs either. Maybe a better defensive center. I don't think Nurkic is that good defensively. Sorry, Gabe?
I'm thinking someone like a Nicholas Claxton.
But even him, he is someone that, he's a young player. I think he just actually signed an extension. So I think someone like him, but that, stylistically, I think that's a great fit. I mean, you have Plumlee. I think Plumlee's solid as a backup center.
I like Plumlee, yeah. I think they still lack that depth.
I nearly sneaky picked the Suns to make the conference finals this year because I thought Budenholzer could fix the offense and I thought he could get the most out of the players. And I think that they needed the point guard in which they got. And even like you look at the draft, like they got that rookie kid done now. Like he's just come in and made like an instant impact, like
Yep.
3-and-D player. Like I've seen stats on his 3-point percentage, how he'd made more threes in the NBA in 2 weeks than he had in his entire college career at Virginia. So like even he is someone that you wouldn't necessarily expect to come in. I think Phoenix, because we know what KD and Booker represent. We know what happened last year, but I think, if I'm being honest, that was more of a lack of internal motivation as opposed to a lack of talent on the court. And I think that Phoenix are still one of the most talented teams in the NBA. And I think we've sort of been robbed, in essence, of a Devin Booker's prime, because he really should be in it right now, and something hasn't really clicked. Do you think Phoenix could make it back to the finals, Reuben?
I think potentially, maybe if they stayed healthy, potentially. But I think, Luka, you somewhat brought it up. I think they lack leadership. I still am not sure whether Kevin Durant can take the mantle of becoming the leader. And the Suns generally, the core of like Devin Booker, they were 2-0 against the Bucks in the 2021 finals. I think it was in 2022. Yeah, 2021, and they just couldn't close out the series. They just didn't have anyone to step up and become that true leader. And I think the Suns are lacking that still at the moment. They're
I didn't say win the
contender.
finals. I just said get back to the finals. You know, they still get back to the finals and lose. I'm also just meant like, can you see them winning the West?
Potentially, but I just think there's too much firepower. Like the Houston Rockets have actually started off really well. They're only 1.5 games off the 1 seed, and I wanted to bring them up quickly. Actually, they've got the Clippers, Bulls, Bucks who are struggling, Pacers, and Trailblazers twice. If they can win 4 or 5 out of those games, they'll be top, and we'll be talking about them like we've been talking about the Cavaliers and Golden State. That's just how competitive the NBA is. And my Memphis Grizzlies, I want to give them a shout out too. Jalen Wells and Zach Edey have been outstanding, but the Grizzlies have the same issue with the Suns. It's the health, because we can't get Ja Morant or Desmond Bane to stay healthy for a full season to see them like properly gel with chemistry and everything. Yeah, or Jaren Jackson. So I think health is just the problem with the Suns and the Grizzlies. They could easily make the finals. Like we saw Dallas do it out of nowhere.
Reuben, I'm going to stop you right there. No, we're not comparing the Suns and the Grizzlies. That's like comparing chalk and cheese. It's just, no.
They're only 2 games off each other.
Yeah, it's early days, Rubes. It's early. I know you love some Grizzlies. I know you were robbed last year because they were so bad we never talked about them anymore. So you're trying to make up for that lost time.
Luka, not long ago they were the 2 seed, and we were very competitive with the Lakers.
I couldn't even grow a beard the last time they were in the playoffs. Now I can. That's how long it's been since they were good. All right.
Can we talk about your Clippers missing it last season as well?
I've never tried to tell you the Clippers were good. I always knew what they were. Anyway, that's besides the point. I want to talk about Steph. Okay, because I think as long as Steph is there, I think the Warriors are always in contention. Okay, and I don't think they necessarily need a second star to come in. I think they just need any given player, any given night, and that's what they've been getting. Whether it's been from Buddy Hield, whether it's been from Wiggins, whether it's been from Kuminga, like. There was one time, Lindy Waters the third came in one night and just like dropped 25 out of nowhere. I was like, who's this guy? Right? Like they got people just stepping up out of nowhere. They still have Draymond Green. They still have the nucleus. And I remember watching that Celtics game when Buddy Hield just went absolutely nuts in the fourth quarter. Like if he can do that, if anyone can do that, like Kuminga, I think still got a chance to emerge. He got benched because they didn't come to contract negotiations, and that sort of spiraled their relationship for a little bit. But any given player can step up for them. And I think the Warriors, as long as Steph's there, are always in contention. Now, I've heard a lot of Giannis talk, would be unreal. We'll talk about that later at a different time. But maybe not this season, maybe next season. But I think as long as Steph's there, the Warriors can do it. And I think Steve Kerr, he's a top 3 coach. He could even be the top 1 coach in the NBA for all I care. He's always continuously finds a way with different supporting pieces to get things done. And I think as long as Steph's there, I think they can contend. He's still that good. His game isn't predicated on athleticism because he's so talented beyond the arc. Anyone's thoughts on that?
I don't know. I still don't think they're solidified. I'd still like to see some moves before the trade deadline before we solidify it. Because Curry in all those years, he always could rely on at least a Klay Thompson to step up. we've seen moments where certain players can step up, but it's whether they can do it consistently. The Mavericks, it wasn't just Luka Doncic. They had Kyrie Irving come alongside him as well. And the Warriors, they don't have that obvious second option. So as good as Curry is, I love Stephen Curry. He's a great player. I still would like to see that solid stacking star. And that's where I think Jonathan Kuminga, I think, really needs to step up his game. I think once the contract negotiations get sorted out and he's in his game, he could become that second star. We can't count him out yet.
Who did the Warriors play yesterday, Rubes, out of curiosity?
Oh, I haven't kept up with it all, but...
Oh, come on. We played the Mavericks.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, I do. I've had a mind blank. Yeah, Clay actually played really well that game. He shot 6 of 12 from 3, I think. Yeah, he was very impressive. But
yeah, but I'm just saying, Rubes, the Warriors, their players came along for a ride against a team that you're saying their players came along for a ride, and that's what makes them so good.
Yeah, but the Cavs are 13-0, and we're not necessarily saying that they're going to win it all. So it's the start of the season. I called it. Look, I've got a new theory, and I was telling Luka before the show. I'm excited to tell you my theory.
Please.
So I call this the 2023 Utah Jazz syndrome. In 2023, the first season, I think, was without Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. They started off 10-3. They ended up 37-45, 12th in the conference. So just because you start off well doesn't necessarily mean it's going to reflect throughout the whole season. And I think we're going to see the true stars come out later on in the season with players start coming back. And we see the true colors of underperforming teams like Philadelphia, New York, and all of them. And I just think teams like the Warriors and Cavs, you're going to see that drop off.
Gabe?
I can agree with you, but again, it's Steph Curry. He is him. He will get the job done. He will claw them to the finals. I mean, not to the final, to the playoffs. Sorry. But yeah, I'm excited. I don't know how long all these teams. I think after the Emirates Cup, everything will start to go into play as how you said, Reuben. All the teams will start to show their true colors.
Yeah. Look, Curry played well in the Olympics, but I just think in 2024, 2025, I just don't think he can get away with Steve Kerr coaching and Curry on his own to make the Warriors a contender. Before the season started, I had them. I mean, look, but he's the only player averaging above. No, look, Luka, that's different. That's different. He had Jason Kidd and. He had Jason Kidd and JJ Barea. I would argue that they're both. Yeah, that's still. He's got experience in the NBA. I'd still argue that they're both better than all the current Warriors players in that roster. That Dallas Mavericks team is better than the current Warriors team.
No doubt. But I'm just saying, like we've seen, we've seen teams with the one good player win a championship if they have a good roster constructed around them.
I don't know about that roster, though. We haven't seen it on the big stage yet. We have Carl Anderson coming out of Minnesota. He's been shooting, I think, 25% from 3. Wiggins has been very volatile the last couple of seasons. Buddy Hield, I don't know. He played well against New York. I was very surprised that Philadelphia were willing to let him go. But I don't know if Buddy Hield can shoot it, but I just don't know if he really provides that much else. Because the Celtics, you've got a lot of stars on that team, and that's how they won last season. Warriors, you don't have those stars. You only have Curry, Steve Kerr, and that young core that's still developing in the NBA.
We'll see in due time. I think they all just need to grow into their shells, and I don't think Steph Curry's time frame is going to fit in that. So I think how Luka said it, someone just needs to step up every night. I think they can get far in the playoffs, but people need to start stepping up.
I mean, I think they could get far in the regular season, but it's about whether they could do it in the playoffs against all those teams. Like the Suns have 2 or 3 stars, Grizzlies have 2 or 3 stars. It's whether they can do it against those teams in a 7-game series.
What are you talking about with the Grizzlies, man? This is 2 or 3 stars. What are you talking about?
Jaren Jackson Jr., Defensive Player of the Year, and John Morant.
Oh my god, is Rudy Gobert a star? He's a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, huh?
And we have
Rudy Gobert a star?
Yeah, he's made the All-Star team. And
Really? I don't think Rudy Gobert
Yeah,
is a star. Not anymore. I don't even know
look,
if he was anyway.
I don't look. Rudy Gobert's not great, but he is an All-Star. Look, his game is not pleasant to watch, but he's very good defensively in the interior.
Listen, if there's one thing I learned in 2022 is never count out Steph Curry, so I'm not going to do it again. And that's just my thoughts. I think as long as he's there, they can contend. But we have so much more time to talk about this, guys. But that is the end of the first half of Priceless Takes episode 64, our NBA segment. Reuben, Gabe, thank you both so much for joining me. And we are back for the second half of Priceless Takes, episode 64. We're going to be talking about some NFL, guys. Okay, I have so much to say. This is the first chance I have had to talk some NFL with you guys in a long, long time. And we're going to talk about a few things. So first, we're going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. Then we're going to talk about the AFC Playoff Picture. And then to round off this segment, we are going to talk about the Thursday night preview for the Washington Commanders, who travel to Lincoln Financial Field to battle the division rival Philadelphia Eagles in what is an NFC matchup that I am very excited for. But I'm going to get straight into it talking about the Kansas City Chiefs because they just continue to find ways to keep winning. I don't know how they do it. I don't think anyone really knows how they did it after this last weekend. Obviously, watching the film back, they were smart. And not even smart. They were well coached. They were well trained. And execution paid off because watching the film back, you can see that left guard for the Broncos get absolutely trucked numerous times throughout the season. The Chiefs saw an opportunity, took the opportunity, and they made the most of the potential Denver Broncos game-winning field goal blocked by Leo Chanel caps off a 16-14 Kansas City victory, which sees them start 9-0 on the season. Now, Mahomes, his second straight game without throwing an interception. He has thrown an interception in every single game except for these last two. He's 12 TDs, 9 picks on the season. So it's looking positive for Mahomes, and it sort of seems like the trend is continuing that really whatever he needs to do to win, he is doing. It nearly wasn't enough. In this game, he missed some key throws late in the game to Travis Kelce. He missed one to Xavier Worthy, but whenever that happens, we saw it in week 3 at Atlanta with Nick Bolton coming up with a huge play at the end of that game. We see it today on the weekend with Leo Chanel blocking a field goal. They just keep finding ways. Now, Mahomes finished the game 28-42 for 266 yards, with Bo Nix finishing with 22 of 30 completions for 215 yards. The Denver Broncos, great performance in the first half. In the second half, a great defensive performance. You could say it was a great defensive performance the whole way, considering they got 41 hung on them by the Ravens before, considering the NFL schedule makers made them play back-to-back road games against the Ravens and the Chiefs. The defense traveled, the defense came out to play, and they made it really tough on Mahomes. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the win. Now, the offense will be disappointed. They didn't score any points in the second half, but for those of you that don't know, I'm actually a Denver Broncos fan. I am pleasantly surprised. I am very, very happy with how this team has progressed so far this season. I did not see this coming. I thought that they were not going to be as talented on defense, but they all know their roles. There aren't any huge names on the defense besides Pat Surtain. The rest of these guys are all sort of prove-it guys. And Bo Nix has been playing well enough to win them games. Will they make the playoffs? We're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. But I want to get into next week's matchup where the Chiefs go cross-country, or not really cross-country for them, I take it back. They go to the top of the country to face the Buffalo Bills in their annual, what it seems like at least is their annual regular season matchup, this time in Buffalo. Last year in the regular season, they were in Arrowhead before going to Buffalo Stadium in the playoffs, where the Chiefs did beat the Bills. This time, both teams coming into it as the respective 1 and 2 seeds in the AFC. The Chiefs obviously at 9-0, the Bills at 8-2. The Bills haven't lost a game since October 7th, and that was when they lost back-to-back games. They got stomped by the Ravens 35-10, lost to the Texans 23-20 on that game-winning field goal. Since then, they've gone on quite the impressive run. Josh Allen is 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions on the season, and I'm very excited for this game. Now, the Chiefs have actually opened up as underdogs, which, in my opinion, is the last thing you need for the Chiefs, is to have extra motivation coming into Buffalo, a place where they won in the playoffs last year. But also, Josh Allen does seem to beat Mahomes in the regular season. He's 3-1 against him all time in the regular season, 0-3 in the playoffs, but obviously the playoffs aren't here yet. So I'm giving Josh Allen a very, very good chance. I'm deciding on whether I'm going to pick the Bills or not. I think I'm still leaning towards Kansas City, and I just can't get over Patrick Mahomes, especially in the fourth quarter, especially when they're playing with the lead. When they're playing from behind. The statistics are absolutely staggering. Like, I have them right here. For anyone, when I was reading this, I knew that when he was playing from behind, he was playing better. But it is actually staggering. When playing with a lead this season, Mahomes is 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, with a 63.6 completion percentage. Okay? When playing from behind, he is 8 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, and he has a 72% completion percentage. It is absolutely crazy what this man does when his team is down, because it's almost like he rides the defense, but we can't ride the defense anymore. All right, Mahomes time, and he just comes and he just absolutely plays a different brand of football when they are playing from behind. We've seen it in various games this year. We saw it yesterday against the Broncos where they did go down 14-0 and he came back to eventually win the game despite with what happened with the field goal. Now, can the Chiefs be beat? Yes, is the short answer. I do believe the Chiefs can be beat. The more difficult answer is who can beat them. First of all, who can beat them in general, but more importantly, who can actually beat them in the playoffs? Now, I've seen a number of people talking about how do you actually beat the Chiefs? And the general consensus sort of is there's a very specific way you need to beat the Chiefs, okay? I actually think there's 2 ways you can beat the Chiefs. The first way, which wasn't done, well, the last time that was done was Christmas last year, in which the Vegas Raiders just punched them in the mouth. They had a back-to-back pick six, a back-to-back scoop and score, and they just said, sorry, Kansas City, you're just not going to get back in this game. I don't think that can happen with this Chiefs team this year. I don't think they can get punched in the mouth quite that way. And the way that I think they can get beaten, I think, is sort of how I would say a group, there's a particular group of sort of NFL thinkers who I think also believe this as well. From what we've seen from Mahomes since he's had a top 5 defense in the NFL, particularly the last 2 seasons, is that he sort of plays off the defense and he doesn't do anything that is going to give the offense of the other team, and by that same fact, his defense, any shortcomings. He's not going to give them a short field where they're going to be already put on the back foot. He gives them, if he has to, he punts the ball away. He puts it down to the opposition 20, 10, 30-yard line. He doesn't give the defense short fields. And the way that you beat the Chiefs is you really just need to tag along with Mahomes the whole game. You sort of got to be right there, but you got to be there, but you can't get him until right at the very end. And that's sort of what we saw with the Bengals in a way. When they beat Mahomes to get to the Super Bowl, that was more so Mahomes came back into the game, but the Bengals didn't give them any time in overtime to stop him. And obviously they got the defensive stop too in overtime, which led to their field goal. But you really got to sit along with the Chiefs for the rest of the game until that very last moment. Because we've seen in some games, we saw the Falcons had a chance, the Ravens had a chance, the Broncos had a chance, the Bengals, they pretty much had a chance too, but they've had chances, these teams, but no one's been able to get there, and the teams that have been able to get there haven't left enough time have left too much time on the clock for Mahomes. The bigger question is, who are the teams that can actually do this? Now, in the playoffs, controversial. Maybe not controversial for some of you. I don't think Lamar can do it in the playoffs. I don't think that Lamar can lead a game-winning drive against the Chiefs defense in the playoffs. He can maybe lead it to how it was in week 1. He can get it to the last play and to so close. But I just don't think Lamar can do that against Mahomes. And particularly when you look at these two teams, the last thing you want to do with Kansas City is get into a shootout with them. And we've seen that in the past, when you've gotten into a shootout with them, that's how you lose games. And in the playoffs, Mahomes can play in any way. He can play a shootout. He can play with the defense. We saw in Buffalo last year where he had to engage in a shootout. They ended up winning 30-27. We saw in the game after in the AFC Championship against the Ravens, we saw them play a more closely contested defensive ball game, but Mahomes still did everything he needed to do along with the Chiefs defense. I don't think the Ravens can get into a shootout with the Chiefs, and I think that, unfortunately, with the Ravens defense this season, I think getting into a shootout for the most part is really the only way that they're going to be able to win playoff games, unless they come up against another good running team, because their run defense is pretty good, but the other teams, contenders in the AFC, don't really run the ball that well, apart from the Bills. But their running back, in essence, is their quarterback. I like James Cook, but Josh Allen is the QB and the RB1. There's 3 teams I think that can do it. Okay? I think that the Bills can do it. I think I trust Josh Allen more than I trust Lamar Jackson to do this in the playoffs. I think the history's told us that. I think that Josh Allen has played several close games with Mahomes. He's played some of his best playoff games against Mahomes. I think he, if I'm being honest, is at the top of my list because he has a defense that is good enough. Second on the list is the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, they need to get into the playoffs first, but for some reason, whatever reason, they always seem to play the Chiefs incredibly tough. And they, in the same breath that the Chiefs were so close to beating the Bengals in previous matchups between the two teams, the Bengals have been just as close these last 2 times. Okay, the last 2 times with Joe Burrow playing, obviously, we had Jake Browning in. They had Jake Browning in last year, not Joe Burrow. But the AFC Championship game of 2 years ago and their Week 2 matchup of this year have both been incredibly close and have come down to 2 silly penalties from the Cincinnati Bengals defense. And this is just the biggest problem, is the defense hasn't gotten any better. I don't see why in a close game the defense won't let them down again. I know Joe Burrow can play well. I know Jamar Chase can play well. I know Trey Hendrickson can play well, but I don't know if the Cincinnati Bengals as a unit can actually beat the Chiefs as constructed. And that leads me to my third and final team, which I picked this team as my Super Bowl champion. I still am picking them as my Super Bowl champion because I think right now they're sort of in that, second-year quarterback, figuring it out, bad offensive line. But I think that with the talent that they possess, I still think that the Houston Texans, who haven't actually played the Chiefs yet, they're set to play, I think, for Week 15, maybe even Week 16. They're set to play soon. I'm looking for that matchup. And I think the Texans still have some figuring out to do, but I think they can get it done. And I'll tell you why. One, because CJ, when he's at his best, which he hasn't been this season, but we've seen lots of times quarterbacks start off the season not that great and then come into it at the end of the season. And in my opinion, the best teams that are the ones that peak at the right time. Okay, and the classic example that I always give is Tom Brady's Buccaneers, because they just peaked at the right time. That defense peaked at the right time. Joe Burrow in his second year, when they went to the Super Bowl, they peaked at the right time. They came in as the 4 seed. Okay, they peaked at the right time in that season. Okay, you want the team that will peak at the right time. And I think the Texans have the potential to be that team because when you look at what the Chiefs are trying to do, they're trying to do something that nobody has ever done, ever. Okay? And that is win 3 consecutive Super Bowls. So when you look at that, I look at the Texans, I think they have, in my opinion, a top 2 quarterback wide receiver duo in the entire league when Nico Collins is healthy. They still have playmakers on defense, okay? Will Anderson Jr., who is their best defensive player, wasn't there the other night against the Lions, okay? They have talent in the backfield. They have talent all across the board of the defense. They have one of the best defensive minds in the game. They have one of the best young quarterbacks in the game. And this is how we've seen teams win Super Bowls with young quarterbacks who have lots of talent around them. Yes, the offensive line isn't good, but we've seen, I'm going to compare him to Joe Burrow, we've seen Joe Burrow make a Super Bowl with a bad offensive line. Okay, now winning a Super Bowl is one thing, making a Super Bowl is another, but I think the Texans have what it takes to beat the Chiefs. Their matchup in the regular season will definitely be interesting, to say the least. But Chiefs can be beat. Will they be beat? I think so. We'll see how that pans out. But I want to talk about the rest of the AFC because it seems like 6 of these 7 playoff spots are locked up, if I'm being completely honest with you. And that leaves that 1 playoff spot left. Now, listen, I've heard everyone say, but the Dolphins have a chance. The Jets have a chance. But no, they don't. Looking at the schedules, they would have to go on some insane runs. If I had to pick a team, I would say the Dolphins because the Jets have been playing with Aaron Rodgers the whole year. Nothing's really clicked for them. The Dolphins, at least, Tua got injured. Now he's at least come back. They beat the Rams on Monday Night Football, which I think is a very impressive win. I think the Rams are still quite a good team. But I don't think the Dolphins, I think when you look at the team, I think they got to beat the 49ers, the Texans, and the Packers. I don't think they will win either of those games. That's going to put them at 10 losses. I don't think 7-10, it's not going to cut it. They're going to need to go on a big, big run. And I don't see them doing it, particularly because the games without Tua this season has just been too much for them to handle. I think the Jets are just a lost cause. I don't see them. I think they have to play the Rams, the Bills, and the Dolphins times 2. So even if the Dolphins and the Jets split that series, that's 1 loss for each of them. That'll put them both at 8 losses. And even then, they'd have to win out for the rest of those games. So I don't think either of those 2 teams are making it, which leaves 3 teams, which leaves my Denver Broncos, okay, my to a lesser extent, Cincinnati Bengals, okay, for those of you that don't know, because the Broncos are in such dismay, I took on the role of being the Joe Burrow guy. I still am the Joe Burrow guy. And then you have the Indianapolis Colts. Look, for me, I think it's a 2-horse race. I think it's between the Broncos and the Bengals. I look at the Colts schedule. They have the Jets away, who, that's going to be hungry. I think they have the Lions at home. They're going to lose that game. They have the Broncos away. I think they're probably going to lose that game too. Okay, so the Broncos away, I think I said that. Then they have the Titans, the Giants, the Jags, the Patriots. Those are 4 wins. They currently sit at 4-6. 8 wins. Could 8 wins be enough? Oh, maybe. Depending on how the other 2 teams play, and depending on what happens with the tiebreakers. And this is what it's going to come down to, really. I look at the Bengals schedule, I look at the Denver schedule. I genuinely actually do think the Bengals can win out. I look at their schedule, I look at the Chargers away, okay? That's a must. Well, it's a must win, but it's actually not a must win when you look at the rest of their schedule. They have the Steelers at home. Joe Burrow has a good record against the Steelers. I know the Steelers are playing very well, but that is still a winnable game for them, okay? The Cowboys away, the Titans away, the Browns at home, okay? I think those are 3 wins. I think those are locks, okay? That gets them to 7-6. I think they split with the Steelers, okay? And they play the Steelers away in Week 18. I think that's the game that they will lose. So I give them 7 losses then. And then you have the Chargers game, okay? And I think the Chargers have locked in their... Well, they haven't locked it in, but I think they've basically locked it in. They're sitting at 6-3 right now. The Bengals got to win that game just flat out. I think it's a game they can win. I don't think the Chargers are super special. I think they're a good team. I didn't think they'd actually make the playoffs, but with the rest of the AFC sort of not being as good as I expected, they've sort of just taken in to that second wildcard spot. But the game that this season will come down to will be Broncos-Bengals Week 16, okay, week 16 at Cincinnati, okay? That is going to be the game that this comes down to, okay? I think the Bengals win that game. I think the winner of that game gets that last playoff spot because of a tiebreaker, particularly if the Broncos, for whatever reason, lose to the Colts at home, then the Broncos are definitely screwed, and I think that makes the path easier for the Bengals, considering that the Colts, I think, will have a worse record than the Bengals and the Broncos, even if they beat the Broncos. But the Bengals sneak into the playoffs. That's what I'm going with. They sneak into the playoffs. They beat the Chargers. They beat the Steelers. They beat the Cowboys. I think the Bengals can rattle off the next 5, maybe 6 in a row. Okay? And when I talk about teams getting hot, the Bengals are that team we know can get hot late in the season. But this Chargers game, it is a must-win. I take it back, because then you look at it. If they fall to 4-7, then they essentially do have to win all of their games. Okay? Because you got all of their games. They got 5-7, 6-7, 7-7, 8-7, 9-7, 10-7. 10 wins, I think they can get in with 9. But I'm looking at these records. I'm projecting both Denver and Cincinnati to actually finish 9-8, because I think they will drop one game somewhere along the line. But I'm projecting Cincinnati to go 9-8 only because I think that's what they can get into the playoffs with. I think they can get to 10 wins. I really, really do. I think the offense is that dynamic. I think the defense, at some point, whether it even be for a 2 or 3 game stretch, has to play and give some sort of semblance of life. They still have players who are incredible playmakers. When you look at Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Trey Hendrickson, they are all having historical seasons. And I think the Bengals can at least get into the playoffs. And if I'm any team, I don't want to see the Bengals in the playoffs, particularly if I'm Josh Allen sitting at the 2 seed. That's the last team I want to see in wildcard weekend. I think 9 wins will lock up that last spot. I think 10 is safe. I think whichever team gets to 10, I think only one of these teams will get to 10. If one of these teams gets to 10, that team will be in. But I think 9-8, and I think that Cincinnati will get the tiebreaker over the Broncos. I think the Colts are cooked. I think their quarterback room is just cooked. Their defense isn't very good. They have Jonathan Taylor. They have Michael Pittman. I just don't see the Colts getting into the playoffs. Now, to finish, Eagles-Commanders preview. Okay, Thursday Night Football. What a matchup. Jaden Daniels, since the rib injury, he's sort of gotten... He fell off last... He didn't have a very good game last week, okay, despite the Commanders' points. He didn't have a very good game. He didn't have a very good game last week. He had an okay game against the Giants, but it's the Giants the week before. And then the week before that was a close contest against the Bears, which was the Hail Mary game, which we all know about. Post-rib, he hasn't been that impressive. But you know who has been impressive in the time that he hasn't? The Philadelphia Eagles, and particularly Jalen Hurts. He has been balling. The Eagles are on a 5-game win streak. Saquon was exactly what the doctor ordered. Okay, Jaden Daniels had a 50% completion last week. Jalen Hurts, I get it was the Cowboys. He was 14 of 20, 202 yards, 2 tutties, 1 pick. On the season, Jalen Hurts, 22 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, okay? 12 passing, 10 rushing. So you can say 12 TDs to 5 picks if you want to leave the rushing tutties out of there. But 10 rushing touchdowns, and I get it, yeah, they're from the 1-yard line. Not all of them. He had a nice 14-yard touchdown running against Jacksonville 2 weeks ago. Okay, I see you, Jalen. But yeah, it's Jacksonville. But still, he's still doing it, okay? Because no one will be complaining if they handed the ball off to Saquon on the 1-yard line. Okay? They would say, oh my God, look, Saquon has got 12 touchdowns this season. That's unreal. Look at him go. Okay? I don't think we should be discrediting Jalen Hurts for those touchdowns just because that is how they most effectively score the football. Okay? Jaden Daniels, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks, and he has 4 rushing touchdowns. Okay? The Eagles have scored 28 plus in 4 straight games now. Okay? The Washington defense allows 21 points per game. And they're also 29th in the league in yards per carry to running backs. Okay, they actually did do quite well against Najee Harris last week. They held him to 2.7 yards per carry. Saquon's averaging 4.5 on the season. I think that's going to be a big problem for the Commanders, particularly with the fact that Saquon is just as good of a threat in the receiving game as he is out of the backfield. And I think that the Commanders could have a lot of problems, particularly with the defense of Philadelphia. They've sort of found something. They've assured the secondary. The secondary is looking good. They are looking good defensively. 17 points per game allowed. That's 5th in the NFL for points allowed this season. Okay, Washington scores 29 points per game. Even last week against Steelers, we still saw Washington put up 27 points. They're going to score the ball. I'm predicting that this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think it could nearly be a shootout. I think we need to see a game from Jaden Daniels, okay? We saw Cincinnati. We saw him in the spotlight as sort of the Washington Commanders' Jaden Daniels coming out party, and I think we need to see that here. Eagles, 5 sacks allowed last weekend against the Cowboys defense that has been underachieving all season. That's something I don't like. The Eagles O-line has been one of their strong suits. Obviously, they got my man Jordan Mailata, my Australian brother, in the offensive line. Okay, I think they missed Jason Kelsey. They allowed 5 sacks last week. Washington got 3 sacks last week. Okay, they're 9th in sacks for the year. They do have a good front 7, and I do like that about the Commanders. I think that is where they can cause Philadelphia some problems, and I think they will need to, because the secondary for the Commanders has not been very good this year. You look at AJ Brown, he had 80 yards last week in a blowout. You look at Devontae Smith, he's been balling, okay? You look at Dallas Goedert, who needs to see what's actually going to happen with him for this matchup. I think, I might even give you an injury update right now as we speak, because he's an important part to their offense too. What are we saying? He has been listed full participation in practice, so I think he's going to play. He doesn't really have a status, but I think that the Philadelphia offense can be firing against this defense as long as Hurts can get protection. But Hurts can get out of the pocket, so can Daniels, even post-rib. Last week wasn't great. I think he had 3 carries for 5 yards, lowest of his short career. Give me Philadelphia to continue their winning streak in this game. I had Philadelphia getting to the NFC Championship game at the start of the season. I think they can overcome Nick Sirianni's shortcomings. I still don't really trust him. I think he's a hothead. I don't trust him in the playoffs, but I think they have a good enough roster. They have good enough coordinators in Philadelphia, okay, with Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore. I think they've found something. I think they can maintain it. Give me Philadelphia to beat the Commanders. I'm going to go with a 31-27 ball game. I think it's going to be quite high scoring, similar to the Commanders game last week against the Steelers, and similar to Philadelphia's games previously, scoring lots of points. Give me Jaden Daniels to have a comeback game. I'm picking him to have a comeback game. I think Jalen Hurts will continue. I'm looking for Saquon to get on the board with a touchdown. That's where I think they're going to do good. Marshawn Lattimore, could he be the difference? We'll see. We shall see. Big pickup. He's just come back off the hamstring. We'll see how he looks, but he could be maybe not the missing piece, but one of the missing pieces for this Commanders defense. We shall see how this NFL game goes. And looking forward to the weekend, obviously we have some big games. We've got Bills, Chiefs in Buffalo. We've got Bengals, Chargers in LA. Some big games this weekend. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is all for Priceless Takes episode 64. Thank you for tuning in to our double episode featuring both the best of the NBA and the NFL. And thank you for staying with us. Make sure to look on our social media platforms. We're on Instagram and TikTok, and we are also on YouTube, okay? If you want to see me in person, in face-to-face, go watch it on YouTube as opposed to the listening version on Spotify, all under the handle at Priceless Takes. Will be in the description below. Thank you for tuning in to Priceless Takes. I am your host, Luka Price, and I will see you next time.